The Texas Longhorns made history at the NFL Draft Combine in Indianapolis over the past weekend. Yes, history.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Road, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, the Texas Longhorns football players were the buzz of the weekend at the NFL Combine. We discussed that in the second segment. The baseball team, Texas baseball, came down to Houston for the Astros Foundation Classic and unfortunately went 0-3 against Texas State, Vanderbilt, and LSU. And in the last segment, the Texas basketball program is trending back up. A huge road win last week over Texas Tech. They followed that up with a big 16-point victory in the Moody Center over the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Tonight on Big Monday, they go to Waco to play against the ranked Baylor Bears on the road. Right, all of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just the theme of the offseason on Locked On Longhorns has been confirmation bias, right? I've continued to say that we get more and more confirmation bias as this draft process rolls on, that this was one of the most talented rosters we've ever seen at the 40 acres, right? From beating Alabama to winning your first conference championship since 2009 to making the college football playoffs to, 11 players being invited to the NFL Draft Combine, to the way that they performed in the NFL Draft Combine over the weekend, the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, just everything, right? I've said this is one of the most talented rosters we've ever seen at the 40 acres. Certainly the most talented roster we've had since the Mac Brown era. And it seems like once a week, we continue to get confirmation bias that, man, this 2023 team at the University of Texas was special, right? When you look at the NFL Draft Combine, we've come a long way over the last few years. I remember after our 5-7 season, after Sark's first year, we only had 2 invitees to the NFL Draft Combine, and Josh Thompson and Cameron Dicker, and neither one got drafted. Right, this year we had 11, and I think we are a lot to see 7 players from the Texas Longhorns football team get drafted, and I think they can break the record this year of 7 that they set in 2007 in the 7th-round draft. I think they can have 8 players from this 2023 roster drafted in the 2024 NFL draft. So let's start with Xavier Worthy, right? We talked about, the Texas Longhorn players shining. If you go read any article about who elevated their draft stock or winners and losers from this weekend or just the combine as a whole, you cannot tell the story of the 2024 NFL Draft Combine without talking about how the Texas Longhorns players dominated in it over the weekend. And I think Xavier Worthy stole the show more than anybody, right? I think Xavier Worthy may have added more money to his bank account or elevated his stock this weekend more than anybody, right? So he weighed in at 5'11" and 165 pounds. I think he tweeted, or I saw him tweet, that he's been 165 pounds all year relaxed. So, maybe some people were getting on him and, starting that narrative that he won't be able to hold up in the NFL because he's 165 pounds. That's something we've been hearing for a lot. Like, how will he be able to go across the middle? And I think, another Sark receiver did a really good job of kind of killing that narrative in Devontae Smith, because he won the Heisman at 165 pounds and he's been dominating in the National Football League the last 3 years at 165 pounds as well. So that shouldn't be a concern for Xavier Worthy, who's slight in terms of frame. For his 40, the first time he ran a 4.25, right? And that's one of the best times we've ever seen. That's a really good time for him, right? He made some money with that run. He could have walked off the field, said, hey, like, I ran a 4.25. My work here is done. But in the interviews beforehand, he said he had a chance to break the record. And so he comes back out and runs again after running a 4.25 and breaks the record that John Ross set with 4.22, and he ran a 4.21. So just really proud of Xavier Worthy to come out and etch your name in history at the NFL Draft Combine. And there's a chance that that record may never be broken, right? We're going to have to see somebody run a 4.2 flat to break Xavier Worthy's record. Not sure we'll ever see that, but, we'll see. Right? I didn't think anybody could beat 4.22, and here we are. He also put up a 41-inch vertical. I think Xavier Worthy was looked at as a second-round pick coming into this process by me, experts, and scouts. A lot of people but there's just no way that you can take 32 players off the draft, off the board before Xavier Worthy, with him running a 4.21, right? And the route running he put on tape, the explosiveness he put on tape, the footwork, the ability to get in and out of cuts and breaks in his routes, the way he put on tape, scoring 26 touchdowns over the last 3 years at the 40 acres, him running that 4.21 solidified that he will be a first-round pick in the NFL draft and should be one of the most explosive weapons in the National Football League starting from day one. Adonai Mitchell stole the show as well, right? The wide receivers performed so well at the NFL draft combine that Quinn Ewers started catching strays, right? And everybody started talking about how Quinn Ewers was holding our wide receivers back last year, even though we were 11 yards away from from the national championship game and went to the college football playoffs as Big 12 champions. But, it's the internet. People get bored, right? When you look at Adonai Mitchell, he came in at 6'2", 205 pounds, probably what we expected him to weigh and come in height-wise. But we did not expect him to run a 4.34 40-yard dash, right? And he had a 39.5-inch vertical. So I've said that when you look at Adonai Mitchell's tape, it screams first round, right? But there's so many good, wide receivers in the first round, so many good players in this draft period that I thought he might get pushed to the second round, depending on his measurables, right? But him coming in at 6'2", 205 pounds with a 4.3, 4.40, yeah, he's a lock to go in the first round period. So Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy both came into the draft as potential second round picks with, first round tape. The way they measured up this weekend at the NFL draft combine, Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy are locks to go in the first 32 picks taken in the 2024 NFL draft. Byron Murphy is the third lock to go in the first round. Came in at 6 foot, 297 pounds. We knew he was undersized at the defensive tackle position. Turn on the tape. I bet you he doesn't look undersized, right? 4.87 40-yard dash, 28 reps on the bench press, 9 foot, 3-inch broad jump. So he showed explosiveness there. I think he's a lock to be a top 10 to 15 pick and to be the first defensive lineman off the board, right? Not a great edge rushing, draft in terms of players at that position, and not a, ton of buzz around the defensive tackles. So, Byron Murphy seems to be the clear standout prospect in what is still a good draft in terms of depth at that positions, but you don't really have the high-end players you're used to seeing at the edge and defensive tackle position. So I think Byron Murphy has a really good chance to be a top 10 to 15 pick in the NFL draft, and certainly has a really good chance to be not only the top defensive lineman selected in the 2024 NFL draft, but we could look back, years from now and say Byron Murphy unquestionably was the best defensive lineman in the 2024 NFL draft, period. I think he has that much potential. T'Vondre Sweat came in at 6'4" and 366 pounds, and I think there's people on both sides of the equation with T'Vondre Sweat. There's people like me, even though I'm biased, who will say turn on the tape and you can see what type of dog T'Vondre Sweat is and how that'll translate to the National Football League level. And then there's some people that say, we've never seen a player at 366 pounds have a huge impact in the National Football League. And, T'Vondre Sweat may be a 2-down space eater, but may not have enough of an impact, week in and week out to justify a second or third round pick selection, right? Because of weight concerns, motor concerns, and is he a 2 or 3 down player, right? For me, like I said, I'm biased. I think, no matter where you put T'Vondre Sweat, he's a dog. But, this is the NFL draft process, right? You're investing millions of dollars into these players. You have to nitpick. And there's some nitpicking going on with T'Vondre Sweat right now that could cause him to fall in the draft, right? We knew he wouldn't test well, but I do think some people who were borderline on T'Vondre Sweat were hoping that he would test well to give them the confidence that he could be a high-end NFL player even at 366 pounds. It remains to be seen where he's taken, right? I think people have him anywhere from a second to fourth round pick. Like I said, he's controversial right now. Not controversial. What's the word I'm looking for? When it's like people are on, it's not controversial. I don't want to waste so much time thinking about it. Polarizing. I think he's real polarizing right now, right? Like I said, you either love him, you love his tape, you think he's going to be a superstar in the National Football League, or you think he's too big and you think eventually, he'll just be a 2-down player that may phase his way out of the National Football League. So he ran a 5.27 40-yard dash, which is 17th percentile. Vertical was 26 inches, which is 14th percentile. And the broad jump was 97 inches, which was 11th percentile. Like I said, it comes down to if you're projecting that T'Vondre Sweat won't be a successful National Football League player because of these measurables, or if you watch the tape and say, damn, I think he'll be able to do that in the National Football League too. I'm on that end. I think he'll be able to do that in the National Football League too. I think whoever gets T'Vondre Sweat gets a steal, regardless of what round you draft him in. Jatavian Sanders came in at 6'4", 245 pounds. I think that's solid weight and height for this new era of tight ends. But what was not solid was the 40-yard dash. His first one was a 4.74. Second one was a 4.69. If you're predicating yourself, if your appeal is you're a move tight end or a modern tight end that can almost cosplay as a wide receiver, you can't do that with a 4.69 or 4.74 40. So coming into this draft process, he had to prove that he was tight end two behind Brock Bowers. Not sure if he did that with his measurables, even though he did a really good job in the drills over the weekend in Indianapolis. Ryan Watts, 6'3" and 208 pounds. They announced him as a safety prospect, so it looks like he'll be making that move officially. 4.53, 40-yard dash, 40-inch vertical, and a 10.5 broad jump at a confirmed height of 6'3" and a confirmed weight of 208 pounds. Coming into the process, I did not think Ryan Watts would get drafted. I think after this weekend, he's put himself in that 6th, 7th round conversation. Keelan Robinson, 5'8", 191 pounds, a 4.42 40-yard dash. Just doesn't have the production or the athletic profile to warrant getting drafted. But hopefully Keelan Robinson can come in as an undrafted free agent, cause hell, and make a 53-man roster. Christian Jones, 6'5" and 305 pounds. If you told me Christian Jones was only 305 pounds, I would have thought you were a liar. Not that that's a bad weight. I just thought that he was like 320, 330, right? 5.04 seconds on the 40-yard dash. Really good 40 for a player that size. I think that he ends up, in the 3rd or 4th round conversation. Hopefully 3rd, probably more likely the 4th round. As a tackle, potential guard prospect in the National Football League. Jaylen Ford, 6'2" and 240 pounds. There are a lot of question marks and concerns about Jaylen Ford's instincts and athleticism. You really couldn't do much to answer the instincts question at the NFL draft combine, but what you could do is go out and prove everybody wrong in terms of the measurables. Jaylen Ford was unable to do that. I think he suffered some type of injury to his lower leg. Nothing serious, but, serious enough to where you're not going to go out there and try to aggravate it or test on it. So he only did the vertical and broad jump. This weekend was a huge opportunity for Jaylen Ford to answer some athleticism concerns. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that. Jordan Whittington, 6'1", 205 pounds, only 18 reps on the bench press, was not able to run the 40. Same thing, right? I think when you're looking at Jordan Whittington, he needs to prove that he can be a plus athleticism type player in the National Football League. And without him, testing really at all over the weekend, I just don't think he did enough to put himself in that conversation of being drafted. Looks like more of an undrafted free agent, but certainly somebody that could come in, wreak havoc, cause hell, and make a 53-man roster in camp. So when we look at it after the NFL draft combine, after a very successful weekend for our former players on the 40, I think we have 3 first-rounders in Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and Byron Murphy. And I think we have 7 to 8 players drafted in 2024. It really comes down to how NFL teams feel about Ryan Watts, Jaylen Ford, and Jordan Whittington. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the Texas baseball team who went 0-3 this weekend in Minute Maid Park. They sound like the Astros themselves. Quick word from our sponsors, and then we'll be back. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the National Basketball Association. So I don't know what it is about the Texas baseball team, but we just cannot play in Globe Life Field or Minute Maid. Like, it's like when we come down here to play in Minute Maid in the Astros ballpark, when we go up to Arlington to play in the Rangers ballpark in Globe Life, we haven't had a ton of success, right? And the last 2 Texas games I've been to were in Globe Life and Minute Maid, and we lost both of those games, right? So I'm not sure what it is, right? But last year after we left Globe Life, we certainly went on a run. I think won 16 to 17 straight games after that. So hopefully we have some of that same fortune this year, because this weekend was not pretty for the Texas baseball team. We were 0-3 on the weekend. Once again, we played against LSU on Friday, Texas State on Saturday, and then wrapped it up against Vanderbilt yesterday on Sunday. Once again, going 0-3 in those games. Texas is now 7-4 on the season through 11 games. But the silver lining is last year at this time, they were 4-7 before they went on a 16 or 17 game win streak. So already improvement from last year, even though you're coming off of 3 straight losses in Houston against some of the best teams in the country. And they still can potentially go on that same type of run that they went on last year to solidify themselves as one of the most interesting, I'll say not one of the best, but one of the most interesting and intriguing, right, baseball teams in the country in terms of college. If you look at it on Friday, they lost 6-3 to LSU. LeBaron Johnson pitched 3 innings, but was chased in the 4th inning after allowing 2 hits, unable to record an out in that 4th inning. Tanner Witt came in for relief and overall did a really good job of giving the Longhorns 6 outs, giving us 2 innings pitched, right? But he did allow 2 of LBJ's runners to score. And then LSU tacked on 4 more runs in the 7th with 2 home runs to take a 6-0 lead against the Texas Longhorns. The Longhorns were able to score 3 runs in the last 3 innings, a solo homer in the 8th, and then 2 runs in the 9th to give fans hope and potentially spark a comeback. But it would have been a miraculous comeback, and that's why it didn't happen. LSU ultimately won 6-3 against Texas. Now we go to Saturday, where Texas State beat Texas 11-10. Right. And like LSU, Texas State took a 6-0 lead on the Longhorns, and that was just too much to overcome, even though Texas eventually came back and took a lead in this game. Charlie Hurley and Luke Harrison allowed 7 runs and only recorded 9 outs, with those runs coming on a solo homer, grand slam, and wild pitch in just the first 3 innings, right? Between the 3rd and 8th innings, Texas outscored the Bobcats 9-3. To tie the game at 9. They hit 4 homers and a triple in that span. One of those homers was Porter Brown's go-ahead homer in the 8th inning to put Texas up 10-9. So this was a crazy game where Texas was down 6-0, ended up going up 10-9 with only 3 outs to record against Texas State. Unfortunately, Texas did not get those 3 outs, right? And Texas State would hit his 2-run walk-off homer in the 9th inning to stun the Texas Longhorns 11-10 on Saturday. So you're thinking, okay, lost to Texas State, lost to LSU. Let's get, I'm leaving here with something, right? Let's come out of here and, beat Vanderbilt on Sunday, right? And Texas looked good in that effort, right? They jumped out to a 3-0 lead against Vanderbilt with 3 hits in the first inning, including an RBI double and 2-run homer, right? So you're, top of the first. You're up 3-0. That's a really good start, right? But then Vandy hit a 2-run homer in the bottom of the first to make it 3-2, but you're still up, right? Then the Longhorns hit a solo homer, I think by O'Dowd, to go up 4-2. And between the 2nd and 3rd innings, they made it 8-2 on 2 homers, an RBI double, and a wild pitch, right? So after 2 disappointing performances on Friday and Saturday, you were able to come back and go up 8-2 in just the 3rd inning, right? Against Vanderbilt on Sunday. But then Vanderbilt got a sac fly to make it 8-3, but then Texas put on some more runs, right? Porter Brown hit his 2nd homer of the game, and Gasparino hit a sac fly to give Texas an 11-3 lead in the 4th inning, right? And this was the last score I saw on Sunday because I was watching NBA basketball all day. I was kind of keeping up with the Texas baseball game. So I saw 11-3. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, we're beating up on Vanderbilt. Like I said, we leaving here with something, getting out of the Astros Foundation Classic with the win. Then I looked up and I saw Texas lost. Like a couple hours later, I'm like, what? Texas lost, right? After Texas went up 11-3, Vandy hit solo homers in the 5th to make it 11-5, 2 solo homers. And then after that, they said so I'm not sure. My internet just kind of lagged. I'm not sure what it caught and what it didn't. But over the last 4 innings, after Vanderbilt hit 2 solo home runs to make it 11-5, Vandy then outscored Texas 9-0 without hitting a single home run to ultimately beat Texas 14-11 yesterday and move Texas to 0-3 in the Astros Foundation Classic. When you look at this weekend, I think the storyline is the pitching, right? How can it be anything other than the pitching when Texas allowed 31 runs in just 3 games? That's over 10 runs a game and 53 base runners in just 3 games, right? You're averaging almost allowing 18 base runners per game against some of the top competition in the country. That's not going to play really well, right? And you're not going to go far, in the regional, super regionals, College World Series, wherever, right? If you have that type of pitching. But they look to bounce back against one of their biggest rivals tomorrow night against Texas A&M in the dish. Hopefully, the Texas baseball team can bounce back after a really rough weekend in Houston in the Astros Foundation Classic. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the basketball team who is trending up, all right, while the baseball team is trending in the opposite direction. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Nissan. All right, the 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen entertainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room up to 8 in expensive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. And if you're looking at the 2024 Nissan Armada, it will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, we're getting out of here talking about the Texas basketball team, and they had a huge victory last week on the road against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They followed that up this past Saturday with a really big win against Oklahoma State, right? Oklahoma State is an inferior team. I think they are under 500, period, not only just in conference play, but period, which is rare to see in the Big 12, the best conference in college basketball. And Texas more so looks like a lock to make the tournament at this point, but you couldn't go out and fold against a bad Oklahoma State team, right? You know, that would have put your tournament hopes in serious jeopardy. But I think winning that game, they've all but locked a spot. If they lose to Baylor tonight, that won't really affect them in terms of the NCAA tournament. And then they have a very winnable game against Oklahoma on Saturday, and they've won the last 6 matchups against the Oklahoma Sooners. So they should fare really well at home coming up against the Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday. But we're talking about this past Saturday, Texas did a really good job of beating Oklahoma State 81-65. And when you look at, the current bracketology, Joe Lunardi hasn't updated it as of this morning, but coming into the game, they were an 8th seed in the region with UConn as the number 1 seed. So maybe a chance for redemption. We didn't play UConn last year. We played Miami, but yes, I take that back. But maybe a chance to knock off UConn if we get into that bracket. I'd rather us to be in the Purdue bracket in the Midwest region, but all depends on what we do over our next 2 regular season games in the Big 12 tournament. When you look at what happened on Saturday, 5 things I liked in that performance. The team went into a rut, and Oklahoma State tied the game in the second half at 52, right? And it looked like, same old Texas. They're folding. They're turning the ball over. They're not making shots. And here goes Oklahoma State about to take this game from us, similar to the way UCF did when we were up 17. But after both teams were tied at 52 in the second half, from that point on, Texas outscored them 29-13. The biggest reasons for that is their defense and their hustling, right? And that led to offensive opportunities. Max Aceman shot 50% from the field and knocked down 3 threes. So he's slowly getting back into Max Aceman's form. Was really good, I thought, in this game against Oklahoma State on Saturday. Kendall Weaver had 16 points, his career high at Texas. Remember, he started at UTA, so he scored more than 16 points before. But he has not scored 16 points yet this year at the University of Texas. He did that on Saturday. Also had 2 offensive rebounds. Kendall Weaver just continues to make winning plays every time he steps out on the court. Tyrese Hunter brought great energy and defense to the table, was a lot more decisive on offense in terms of getting to his shot, whether it was taking threes, taking somebody off the dribble, or finding an open teammate, right? When the ball got in his hands, he didn't look like a deer in headlights like he does most times. He was really decisive, and I thought he did a really good job of contributing to winning plays, right? Steals, 9 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. He was just everywhere making plays for this Texas basketball team. And he has to continue to play like that on a night in and night out basis for Texas to reach their true potential. I'm not sure if he can be a legitimate third option. I'm not sure if on a night by night basis he'll be our third best player, right? But he does have to put in the type of effort he did on Saturday, because he can change a game with his defense, his passing, and his ability to knock down shots and get to the rim. We out-rebounded Oklahoma State by 11. That's back-to-back games against Oklahoma State and Texas Tech where we out-rebounded our opponent by double digits, right? We're used to being out-rebounded by double digits. Back-to-back games, we flipped the script and out-rebounded our opponents by double digits. That's really good by the Texas basketball team, and committed less than 10 turnovers for the second game in a row. So rebounding and turnovers have plagued this Texas team all year. Really good adjustment in the last 2 games to clean both of those things up. The keys for tonight at Baylor, right? I need this win, right? Because I want to text my sister and say, look, we beat y'all twice this year in the Moody Center and in y'all new arena, right? got to stay attached to guards. Baylor usually has 4 shooters on the court at a time, and they can shoot from NBA range, right? So you have to stay attached to guards. You cannot get beat off the dribble and be running, trying to scramble and get to these shooters because they will knock down shots, right? Like I said, they usually have 4 shooters on the court at a time that all can take over a game at any point. Got to stay attached to them and make them take tough shots. And hopefully they miss, right? Because they got some really good shooters that may make them anyway, regardless of the defense you play. Dylan Dessou, Caden Shedrick, and Dylan Mitchell have to make sure we win the matchup in the paint, whether it's Aves Misi or the other big that they have, right? They do a really good job of getting into the paint and causing havoc, and their guards do a really good job of getting into the paint and then kicking out to those open 3-point shooters. But if we do a really good job of rim protection and we do a really good job of limiting opportunities at the rim, then that allows our guards to stay and play one-on-one on the outside and hopefully limit those guards getting hot or those 3-point shooting opportunities. You have to rebound competitively and limit turnovers. I've already talked about how in the last 2 games, Texas' effort on the boards and their effort to keep control of the ball and not turn the ball over has led to 2 straight double-digit wins. If they want to beat Baylor tonight, they're going to have to rebound competitively and limit turnovers in that game. When they beat Baylor in the Moody Center in January, they were able to do that. You have to knock down 3 threes to keep pace with Baylor at home because Baylor will be knocking down threes. In the game that Texas won in the Moody Center, Baylor had 11 threes. Texas had 9 threes. That is acceptable. What cannot happen is Baylor has 11 threes tonight and Texas has 4 or 5. You will lose that game. And then Texas has to get to 75 points, right? Baylor is one of the most explosive scoring offenses in the country. They're playing really well right now, coming off a huge win on Saturday against the Kansas Jayhawks. So they're playing with a ton of confidence. Texas is going to have to score 75 points in this game to find a way to win. This will not be a game where you can go in there and hold Baylor to 62 points or win 63-62. Baylor's going to score a lot of points. Texas is going to have to match that on the offensive end while getting timely stops down the stretch to make sure they can beat Baylor twice in a season and improve their standing in the NCAA tournament. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em.